Good evening. Glad to see we have such a nice turnout on a rainy evening. My name is Richard Roosevelt. I'm the director of the Andrew L. Tuttle Memorial Museum. And tonight, going to make a special offering here. I do a lot of research for different programs, and some of my research was put into a book form. And if you'd like to have one of these souvenir copies, they're $5 a piece. They will go into our Tuttle Endowment Fund, so the money will go to good cause. There's a tremendous amount of material that will not be on the program, and it would be much of interest to you if you'd like to have one. Like I said, you can pick one up. They're laying on the stage right now, or you can contact me after the program. And also, at the end of the program, you're all welcome to go over and check out the new display of Defiance in the Beginning at the Tuttle Museum. It's open tonight after the program. Tuttle is going to be a bicentennial community. This was made possible by the different treaties with the Indians. The primary treaty that within that yellow section of the state would be the Greenville Treaty in 1795. That was settled with the Indians with Anthony Wayne. And by the time of 1818, there was such demand for the land, public demand for the land, and it was all government land, and they decided to open it up for purchase. Those are some of the tribes or nations of the Indians that were in this area at the time of 1818. The interesting thing, we have a federal census of 1820. The population of the territory, which would be Williams, Defiance, Paulding, and part of Henry County, was 387 people. And the future counties were attached to Wood County for administration purposes. Williams County was created in 1820 and later organized in 1824. As you recall, this was not called Defiance County at first. We were part of Williams County. This is the Land Act of 1804 that opened it up. Local government decided to survey the land. You can see that how many acres is 18,200,000 or 18,200 acres under the jurisdictions of the different land offices. You had to go through a land office. They were located in Marriott, Zanesville, Steubenville, Chillicothe, Cincinnati, Worcester, and the one that most of the people went through to purchase land in our area was located in Piqua. Captain James Riley was the primary surveyor of our area around Defiance itself. Riley was a former ship captain. If you want to Google his name, he had quite an adventure before he came to our area. He was actually shipwrecked in Africa. He came to our area with his family and took copious notes of the surroundings and such like this. They used his knowledge as a ship captain in the Black Swamp because he could navigate by the stars. He didn't have to rely on landmarks and such like this. And you can see there were several other surveyors that worked in this area too. But primarily, Riley did Defiance, Richland, Adams, and Tiffin townships, right in this surrounding Defiance. That was interesting. I worked with the county engineer, and he gave me copies of his original notes that he took. And you can see we'll start with the Richland Township, north section 21 and 22. Said it was this is just parts of his notes, I just part of it out of here. Established on a corner of a sugar 18-inch diameter. In other words, maybe a sugar maple. It was 18 inches in diameter. Land rolling, first rate. Timber white and red oak, white and blue ash, elm, sycamore, sugar beet, beech, vast undergrowth, spice, ash, ironwood, dogwood with plum trees and grapevines. And this was dated August the 6th, 1821. Now what he wrote about Defiance Township, this is S3 North, R4 East, and it's the first meridian. If you do check on land records yourself, make sure you enter the first meridian. That's what all the surveying was used from. And here's what he describes Defiance Township in part of this. Land barren or prairie, very scattered timber of scrub, white oak and bur oak, and plenty of grass. Another section in there, he says large deer lick, 100 feet north of the line. In other words, the line where he had surveyed the different sections. The water of which appears to be little salt and strongly impregnated with sulfur. And another part of that says that an Indian trail course north intersects with the east boundary 86 feet north of post. Land all rolling, barren with scattering timber of white and bur oak, absent, and soil second rate. So that was some of his comments he did it while he was surveying. This is some of the early settlers that he found. He noted inside of his different logs and stuff, the people that he ran into at Fort Winchester. You have the Preston family, the Shirley family, that the different James, Ellis, Robert Jr., Mary and Nancy, and Ruth. They were one of the first pioneer families, and if you want to read more about those, go to the 1883 history book. They have quite a section on the Shirley family. James, I think, ends up in Delaware Township. Camp number 3, that's out by Independence Dam. You can see you had John Perkins' family, Montgomery Evans, those different families in that area. And right at the confluence, we had the French families on the banks above the point. We had 3 American families on the Auglays, 1 mile above the fort, 2 of them named Driver. One was a silversmith, and the other one was a shoemaker. They call this Congress land. Basically, it was owned by the federal government, and in the Panic of 1819 caused the federal banking policy that contracted the currency supply, and the failing agricultural prices at home and abroad slowed land sales. Congress responded in part with the Land Act of 1820, which ended the purchase of federal lands on credit. Specifically, the legislation provided for the sale of 80-acre tracts for a minimum price of $1.24 per acre. As a result, the settlers could purchase small tracts with less money than under the Land Act of 1804. which required the purchase of 160 acres at $2 per acre. Apparently, the government was in trouble then and needed money also. Two individuals actually are credited with the founding of Defiance. That's Benjamin Lavelle and Horatio Phelps. As you can see, they purchased land, the actual 33 acres that our community was plotted on, and Phelps, he paid the high price of $30 an acre. As I just read, that you could have purchased the ground for $1.25. There was a lot of competition, apparently, for the different Indian tribes where they had set up villages and cleaned the land and stuff like this. So the timber was removed, and apparently there were other bidders, and it ran him up to $30 per acre. Those 33 acres were subdivided into 150 lots. And the interesting thing that Benjamin Lavelle, his partner, purchased 17.1 acre at the time. Benjamin Lavelle was born July 1781 in Culpeper County, Virginia. He died September the 23rd, 1860 in Piqua, Miami County, Ohio. He was a carpenter by trade. He moved to Piqua in 1805, and he married Martha McConkle in 1807. Was the first wedding in Miami County. Benjamin was the first treasurer also served as the first treasurer of Williams Township in Miami County. He served as a quartermaster during the War of 1812. Benjamin was a merchant in early Piqua and was the first millwright in the county. In other words, he worked with his hands. He moved to Williams County, joined with Horatio Phelps of Dayton, and established the town of Defiance in 1823. Lavelle and Phelps built a two-story warehouse at the foot of Jefferson Avenue. Court was held on the second level of that particular building. Lavelle, Curtis Hunter, and Charles Gunn served as the first county commissioners of Williams County. Lavelle also operated a general store and a ferry which crossed the Maumee River. I think he had, one place I read that it cost him $1.50 to have a permit to install a ferry across the river. He also was of interest that Lavelle helped establish the town of Napoleon. In 1835, Lavelle sold his portion of the land speculation in both communities to Curtis Holgate before returning to Piqua. You can pick up with Curtis Holgate and Williams Holgate and all those that were very instrumental with the forming of Defiance County. Horatio Gates Phelps, he was born December 21st, 1783 in New Jersey. His father, Jonathan Phelps, was a captain in the New Jersey forces during the Revolutionary War. He died November 10th, 1859 in Trenton, New Jersey. He came to Dayton in the winter of 1804, 1805. He married Miss Eliza Smith Houston of Lawrenceville, New Jersey. He built a two-story log house in 1809, earned his living as a merchant. In 1812, he built a two-story brick store and residence. He made a fortune selling merchandise to the goods were in goods to the soldiers of War of 1812 that passed through his area around Dayton. He had also was so successful as a merchant, he opened additional stores in Troy and Greenville, Ohio. And Horatio was one of the founders of the first Dayton Bank, so he was a wealthy man. He purchased large amounts of land during the 1820s after the government surveyed the former Indian lands in northwest Ohio. Get my sequence here. Oh, I know what I'm doing, going backwards. Sorry. I'm wondering what the heck. There is the original plat map of Defiance, and you can see the different areas that were set aside. A is for the courthouse square. B is clear at the top there, and that was the site of the former Fort Defiance, and that was set aside as a public park. And M, it shows where the Methodist lot was set aside for the Methodist denomination. P was set aside for the Presbyterian denomination. And also clear to the extreme left by the river, that's lot 126. That was set aside for a school. And this is the number of acres that you see here in the sections. That was all within Williams County. Now, Phelps purchased much more than that 744.25 acres. Those are the different sections that you see they were located in. Moses Rice, he was the second highest. He had 386.9 acres, and the Hilton family had the 350-some acres. It's interesting that we get into the names of Moses Rice. He was born in Nova Scotia, Canada. And he was born in 1768. It was the Granville Center, Annapolis, Nova Scotia, Canada. He died September the 27th, 1852 at West Point, Bigby County, Nova Scotia. His father was Judith Rice. And his father was born in 1731 in Westboro, Worcester County, Massachusetts. And he died in 1801. Also died in Nova Scotia. Now his great-grandfather was Berthel Rice, and the family came to America in 1680s. Moses Rice, he came to the Maumee River Valley in 1821, and he served as our first county treasurer, and his fees for 1 year were $3. Also, he served as one of the 3 bondsmen for the appointment of John Evans to the position of county clerk, pro tem, and recorder. And I know my good buddy David Bennett always talked about Moses Rice, and and I found what he actually, Moses Rice was a citizen of Canada. He never took the allegiance to the United States, and upon discovery, he was forced to leave his position and the town. I could never figure out why they did that. If you notice, there's an underlying theme. A lot of the people that came to Defiance, prominent people that settled here, were only one generation removed from the American Revolution. Soldiers that fought for the United States, and I assume once they found out they had a Tory amongst them, that's why his family was probably forced to move from Massachusetts into Nova Scotia. And Moses never took an alliance to the United States, so he was forced out. The the Hilton family, Jesse, he was a cousin of Joshua Hilton. He was born and raised in Somerset County, Maine. He moved with his family to Highland County in Ohio in 1815. He sold his property in 1822 along with Joshua Hilton, moved to Defiance Township, where he purchased a site immediately west of where the it would be Dietrich Street, where the old B&O station was, and that's where he set up his land. He cleared the land and remained in possession of it until 1834. When he sold it, he moved to Brunersburg, where he kept a tavern for 2 years. In 1830 census states that there were 6 persons within his family, 2 males and 4 females. Joshua Hilton, the other next name on there, he was born June 17th, 1780 at North Rock, Somerset, Maine. He died in August 17th, 1835. He was the father of Bryce Hilton. Bryce was born March the 13th in 1808. Bryce Hilton ran a mill and was a very prominent citizen of Brunersburg, which at that time became a very much a competitor to Defiance. In September 1817, Joshua Hilton, with his family, migrated in a 3-horse wagon from Maine to Ohio, reaching the town of Reading, Hamilton County, on December the 2nd of that year. After several moves, Joshua ended up in Miami County, where he remained until the fall of 1822. In January of 1822, he made a journey afoot to Defiance and vicinity, having with him maps of the surrounding territory, townships, for the purpose of selecting a farm. While he was here, he stopped in the tavern of Robert Shirley, of the Shirley family. Remember I said they were a very prominent family here? Mr. Hilton returned home and went to Piqua, where the land office was located, and he entered, or in other words, purchased 140 acres on the south side of the Maumee River above the Platte of West Defiance, where he removed his family on December the 3rd, 1822. Mr. Hilton erected the first log cabin between Defiance and Fort Wayne, and also he built the first brick house in the county, with exception of the 2 that were in Defiance itself proper. So that's kind of interesting. I've got to get this thing going the right direction. That's the early lots that I found were sold. Lot number 4 was sold to William Preston. William Preston, he served in the Ohio militia during the War of 1812, and he returned and settled in Fort Winchester, and he remained there. In 1820, he married a Miss Butler, and he was elected the first sheriff of Williams County in 1824. He served 2 terms through the year of 1836. He was appointed the first tax collector, road viewer in 1824, and he also served as justice of peace and associate judge of court in St. Joseph Township of Williams County. Lot number 12, well, actually not number 4, is the location of it is the corner of First and Washington Streets, if you want to look it up. Samuel Vance, he purchased lot 12, and that's the corner of 3rd and Washington Streets. The Shirleys purchased lot 58, and that is Wayne Street between 1st and 2nd Street across from the courthouse square. So that's a pretty prominent site. John Perkins, he purchased lot 101, and that's between 1st and Clinton Street across from the courthouse square on the west side of the square. And John Oliver purchased lot 107. It's the corner of 3rd and Clinton Streets, the west side. John Oliver came from Miami County in 1822. He started a farm in Defiance Township, cleared the land, and set out a fine orchard of apple trees, which he set out and grafted. Mr. Oliver brought the grafts from Piqua by horseback. John moved to another site, another farm, and that was the Beatty Farm. You know, Beatty is it was a large farm, and that's where one of our streets is named after that particular farm, Beatty. There he planted another orchard. So reading his article, there were many wolves in the area, and they used the wolf scalp bounties for money was offered by the state and the county. In other words, if you shot a wolf, you could get compensated for that. He moved into town, and he planted another fine group of apple trees there also. Mr. Oliver moved from Defiance in 1837 to Louisville, Scioto County, and in that place he died in 1842. John Perkins, one of the other lot owners, he had lot 58. Perkins was the first settler in Noble Township. He moved from Chillicothe to Maumee Valley as a surveyor in 1816. He was assigned to surveying land in the Ohio Valley under the contract taken by Captain Riley. He purchased land in the future site of Brunersburg and constructed a dam across the Tiffin River. And he used the water from that dam to power a grist mill and a sawmill. He ran both of those to 1833 when he moved to Lafayette, or they call it Lafayette, Williams County, which I think was referred to now as just Fayette. Perkins was the first judge, one of the first judges of Williams County. And he also noted that within his text, he raised the first wheat crop in Noble Township in 1826. Land speculation. There was the same time that Defiance was, lots were offered for sale and such, there was a lot of speculation of where the canal was going to go, and it started, the Maumee didn't start in our area, it started in Cincinnati, and it proceeded to Dayton and stopped. And at that point, the government decided to step in and gave the state of Ohio a bunch of land to offset the cost of the construction of the canals. In May of 1828, Congress transferred 500,000 acres of federal land in the state, which in turn sold over time to help the construction cost of the canals. Congress also granted another 430,000 acres in a 5-mile stretch from Dayton to the mouth of the Auglaize River. So you're speculating where this canal is going to go. You got a 5-mile width coming through there. Within that corridor, Congress gave the state every other section in a checkerboard fashion. Not only did the sales of the land help meet the state's investment in the canals, the value of the land increased substantially, therefore boosting the tax revenue of the state. Ohio received an additional 194,000 acres of federal land to facilitate the construction of the Wabash and Erie Canal from Lake Erie to the Indiana line. The canal officials and state legislators were confident that this form of financial support would solve the problems of continually having to seek loans from beyond the confines of the state to support the canal construction. The only limit that Congress put on it that was attached to these grants that they used to construct the canals were that they were to remain a public highway, and the federal freight and agents were to travel without charge. There's basically what I just told you about, the different chunks of land, the 500,000 acres and the 438,000 acres that actually was the Miami and Erie Canal from Dayton to our area. They had one stipulation that they wasn't going to use the Maumee River. About that time, the local people start speculating, where is the canal going to end up? And one of the first plots that was put out was called East Defiance. They were speculating where this canal would end. East Defiance, as you probably know, that in time, that's where the first bridge across the Maumee River was installed, and also East Defiance became an early site for our different manufacturers. West Defiance, two individuals, Evans and Taylor Webster, speculated that the junction of the canal of the Wabash and Miami canals would be made on the high ground above Defiance, and they platted the West Defiance in hopes that the area there would be utilized for them. In March of 1827, Congress granted the alternate sections of land to the state line of Indiana, not relying on the Maumee River. above Defiance. The place of connection with the Miami-Erie Canal was determined to be at a point called Junction. It was located 10 miles south and west of Defiance in Paulding County. So much for their speculation of where the canal was going to be. In February of 1834, the Michigan and Ohio boundary dispute was finally settled. That was one thing, that they wanted to build a canal, but they didn't want the canal to end up in Michigan when it would enter Lake Erie. They wanted to keep it within the state of Ohio, and also that the Wabash and Erie Canal would connect to Lake Erie there also. The Wabash and Erie Canal was finished to the Ohio line in 1837 on May 8th, 1843, the Albert S. White was the first canal boat to enter Defiance. It traveled from Toledo and was on its way to Fort Wayne. Dense forest south of Junction in Paulding County delayed the completion of the Miami and Erie Canal. The first canal boat traveling from the southern terminus, which is in Cincinnati, did not arrive in its northern terminus, which is Toledo and Lake Erie, until June 27, 1845. So you can see there's a difference between about 2 years between the two canals actually functioning, because they had to come up from the south through the swamp area. They also had a problem with the Miami and Erie Canal. It was very hard to transport the cut stones that they needed to construct the different locks and such like this. So the contractors relied on wood, the original locks, and everything was made out of wood. And that wasn't replaced in our area until 1906. The Wabash and Erie Canal was abandoned southwest of Fort Wayne in 1837, so it didn't really last a long period of time. The Wabash and Erie Canal Reservoir, located in Paulding County, was destroyed in April 25th, 1888 by local farmers and others. And then the Ohio section of the Wabash and Erie Canal was abandoned to Junction in 1891. So essentially the Miami and Erie and the Wabash and Erie were concurrent, and they used that path into Defiance. Also, I found out that the canal system was in use on an average of 275 days per year, sometimes longer depending on the weather. This was kind of interesting, that talks about the mills and such like this. I found a report that said on the canal system of the Miami and Erie Canal was used to power various types of mills along its banks. There was a report stated this is along the length of the whole canal. There was 50 flour mills, 13 sawmills, 9 woolen mills, 24 paper mills, 9 oil mills, and I think they're referring to linseed oil, not oil, like we would call oil. 8 cotton mills, 2 starch mills were located along the length of the canal. In Defiance, we had 3 mills, and you can see the site down there between Clinton Street and Perry. You can see where the railroad intersects that, the B&O. All know where the Dairy Queen's located. And on the other side of the street, on the other side on Perry Street, there was located the Erie Canal. That was Erie Flour Mill was located there. A woolen mill and flour mill were located at the corner of 3rd and Perry. There were 2 lumber yards within the town, Tenzer and Cheney Lumber, but I'm not sure if they initially used the canal to provide a source of power. They may have had other steam or other methods for their machinery. And I also found out an interesting thing before the 1913 flood. The Maumee River Electric Company, was part of the Auglaize power consolidation, thought about using the canal to generate electricity. They said that because of the fall of the canal coming into Defiance, the force of the water could have been used to generate electricity, which was interesting. Within 1 year before the flood, that's when the Auglaize power dam, or power dam as we know it, was constructed and actually did start generating power. Essentially, the 1913 flood put an end to the canal system there. There was so much damage done to the locks and different things. And also doing the reading and stuff around 1900, a lot of people had vandalized the canal. By 1900, they just used it basically to transport timber through the canal. Ship timber was one of the products they had here for the sailboats and stuff like this. And I read one article where somebody opened up the wickets and drained the canal, and the timbers come up and actually came up and stood upright up against the locks, damaging the locks. So there was a lot of problems with the canal. People didn't like it. It long past that they used it to transport people. It was mostly used for freight and lumber. We had a considerable number of companies within the community to work with timbers and such like this. There you can see the end of the canal where it entered the Maumee River. You can see at the lower section there is where the mule bridge connected to the north side, and also that's the site of the proposed Gateway Park that's in the paper people were talking about now. North Defiance there was also referred to as Williamstown, and it was laid out at about the same time in the 1830s. And recently, one of the state maps actually referred to it as Williamstown on the map. The canal boats would enter the river at that point, and the mules would walk along the north bank of the river as they proceeded down to the Independence Dam, area where they re-entered the canal system. Actually, it was North Defiance and Williamstown were platted about the same time in 1835. J. Wilder and Sidney S. Sprague were the ones that plotted it. Isaac Hall operated a trading post there in 1825. Benjamin Lavelle built his residence on the north side of the Maumee River. I don't know why he chose on the north side of the river, but he did. He also operated a ferry across the river at the base of Jefferson Avenue. And the north end, I'm just speculating, the north end of his ferry was probably located close to where his residence was. The south end would have been close to that two-story warehouse, which actually served as the first courthouse of the town. The land, high land around the the crest of the hill at one time was referred to, and if you look at different accounts and stuff, either as the Scalp Flats or the Scalp Level. In 1810, it was reported there was nearly 50 traders were present to trade with the Native Americans. They came mostly from Canada and the Detroit area. In the 1820s, E.C. Betts, an early school teacher, would let out his students to witness the annual fur trading event. Defiance would remain a fur trading village until the Native Americans were first forced to move west across the Mississippi. It was always speculated, I know Dave found it and I've seen reference to it too, but we couldn't prove it, that there was a French fort or trading post was located in that area in the early 1700s. In August of 1794, General James Wilkinson, the second in command of the Legion under Anthony Wayne, built a large earthen and log redoubt on the north side, and it housed several hundred troops under his command, so it was a large fortification. So it did have other sites other than our fort. Bruinsburg. Bruinsburg was a competitor of ours. They again was speculating where the canal was going to go. They did have the only grist mill in northwest Ohio was located there in Bruinsburg, and it was powered by the Tiffin River. And as the canals entered Defiance and Defiance prospered, Bruinsburg never really took off. A little bit of Defiance trivia. You can see the first permanent white settler was Williams Preston. And he also served as the first sheriff. Dave and I found his grave. His grave is located in Edgerton, Ohio. The first doctor was John Evans, and he also operated a store and hotel. It said that he did not trade with the Indians. The first post office was established in 1821 on the north side of the river, moved to the fort grounds in 1823. Timothy S. Smith was the first postmaster, and another interesting trivia is the name Fort Defiance was used until 1824. So I don't, there's so many other forts that were, Fort Wayne, Fort Jennings and stuff, but for some reason our people decided to drop the name Fort from our town. And I never could figure this out on the first school teachers. William must have been a very popular name because we have three different Williams. Were the first school teachers, and last was the first marriage was issued in 1824. The gun name comes up because there was a gun that was a county commissioner at the time. Like I said, this is our bicentennial year. And we'd like to invite you to the party that's going to be held April the 28th, 2003. They're planning to have a large cake, a birthday party at the library on Friday, April the 28th at 5 p.m. Hopefully it's not raining like today. Prior to that, there will be another gathering at the Defiance Community Auditorium in the morning. And at this point that I have not heard otherwise, that I guess the governor of Ohio will be in attendance to give us a proclamation as the Defiance, being the Defiance community, being a bicentennial community. So I thank you for attending. Are there any questions or anything? I know I covered a lot of things that you're probably not familiar with. A lot of this information, if you'd like to check it out for yourself, is contained in the 1883 history book of Defiance County. Or you can Google some of the different names, or I used Ancestry.com for a lot of the information also. But it was an interesting fact that a lot of these people were removed just one generation from Revolutionary War veterans when they came to our town from all over the United States to settle here and make us a strong and prosperous community. And like I'd remind you again that we will have an open house at the Tuttle Museum. You're welcome to go over there and check out a new display on the founding of Defiance, and also if you haven't got a chance to check it out, we have early currency of the different banks in Defiance there. You may or may not have a chance to see that. So, any questions? Yes. I can't see you real well because the spotlights are in my eyes.
Yeah, you say the mills and that would run off of the canals, water. Do you know, would those just be water wheels that would be just right off the side into the canal, or were there side cuts? How would those operate?
Well, the gentleman asked how the different mills were powered, either by direct flow or side cuts. Actually, you could see the different ones. You go onto the different get the right one here. You can see to the far end of it there, it actually had a bypass, and the water would flow underneath, and I assume it was not water wheels but turbines to do this. Just like the one you talked about, the woolen mills, and the one on 3rd Street and Perry, that was the same way the channel of the water come through there and would power the turbine. Any other questions? Okay.
This is the first time that I've seen where land was provided for the Methodist as well as the Presbyterian churches.
Yes.
My question is, I've seen on a map where we had a Catholic cemetery that was located underneath Zeller Corporation. When was that established? Have you come across that at all in your studies?
The lady asked about the Catholic cemetery. The Catholic cemetery was located by Zellers, by the Tiffin River over there in their parking lot. I'm not sure when that was established. I think that was probably in early 1850s, 1840s. With the research, I'm not sure. I'm a Catholic. I don't know why we weren't allowed to be buried with the rest of, I guess we were, whatever. But in the Riverside Cemetery was not formed by a committee until the 1870s. And at that time, they collected the bodies that were located in different areas of the community and took them to one central site. And during that time, over several summers, those bodies in that Catholic cemetery were moved to the Riverside site, and they had their own section in that site. I know they had the local bishop was there to transfer the bodies and stuff, and it was very interesting. The research that I found, they did this, exhumed the bodies in August, and it was very hot, and the people were afraid that a lot of these people buried there died of cholera, and they was afraid that the cholera would spread, and there was a lot of concern about that. And also one other thing that I read in one of the articles, that when they opened up one of the caskets, the individual was laying face down. You know, before they embalmed people, there was a possibility that you may had an illness or malady of some kind, and you weren't really dead. And you would come to life after you were buried, and this individual might have been in there and rolling around and whatever, but it was hit the headlines that this person was buried upside down in his casket. Any other questions?
I have one.
Okay.
Prior to the town being established, there were trading posts and Indian villages. Were they in the same area as the town, or were they like where Kingsbury Park is and Pontiac Park, or where were those structures?
The gentleman asked where the Indian villages were and where the different trading posts were located. A lot of the trading was taken part at the confluence and on the north side. I know in the 1780s and 1770s, with the British would come in here and meet with the Indians and give them their gratuities and stuff to guarantee that they fought with them against the Americans, and also that Wayne had discovered there was a lot of French cabins still standing when in 1794 that they would come in. Basically, you would spend the whole summer collecting furs and stuff, and they would bring them in the fall, and then they would trade for trinkets or whatever, guns, powder and stuff. The British basically supplied them with the guns and the weapons and different things like this to keep them on their side. But they were all throughout this area. You can go to the library, you can see the stone there. Ironside was the name of a trader. He had a double pen log trading post there, so he was right at the confluence itself. There was also noted that there was silversmith here that made different trinkets for the Indians. So that's right in the confluence area around the joining of the rivers.
Thank you.
Any other?
Is there any activity that you know of along Colgate Avenue, the Maumee River?
Well, she asked if there was any activities along the Holgate Avenue, along the Maumee River there. For one, that Winchester had a camp on Holgate Avenue close to the Tiffin River. And it was a fortification there, and he had his several thousand troops. And from there, he sent in scouts to the old Fort Defiance area and looking for the British and such like this. That type of activity occurred then. And also that was where the Winchester never had a battle, but Murr was set up with his cannons waiting to ambush him, and he was on the north side of the river, and Winchester was on the south side of the river. The Indians found out there was numerous armies, American armies coming here, and they abandoned him, and he didn't have a large enough force to withstand the Americans, so he put his cannons on board his small boats and went back up the river to Fort Detroit. Anything else? Well, I thank you. Okay, I see another hand there.
One of your early slides had a list of all the Native American tribes that were here, and in the bottom corner, it was WEA.
Well, our Indian authority down there, Herm Daly, could probably tell you. I think that's the proper term.
Louise,
We,
yes.
yeah,
Never heard of that one. Okay.
yeah, that was
Maybe it's a typo.
probably not a large tribe, but they were in the area, and they negotiated with the federal government to release, from 1795, they had different reservations and land given to them. I think one of the last ones, the 1718, would have been with the Wyandots because they had a large land holding and such like this. So. But some of the lesser tribes were still here. Yes?
I live in Burnsburg, and they that, like you said, there was a grist mill or there was some kind of mill there in the Berg. Do you know, when did that go out of service and would the 13 flood have taken the last remnants of that away too, or you've not heard?
The gentleman asked about the Brunosberg and the mills, where they were and how long they lasted. Did see that, read an article one time, Dave and I found it, that for some reason or other, the locals blew up the dam. They didn't like the dam. I don't know, it bothered their fishing or something. But it was a very progressive area in there. In the 1820s, early 1830s, they actually had a steam-powered boat that went from Brunosberg all the way up to Evansport. And during one of the winters, the flooded water washed the steamboat over the dam and on all the way out to Toledo. But actually, when they quit using the mills, I don't know. But it is noted that Brunosberg had the first mill in northwest Ohio. The farmers would come here with their grain and to get it milled here in Brunosberg. Any other questions? I guess that's it.